Really embarking on a deep dive into pages 60 through 63 of James Joyce's Finnegans Wake. And you've sent us a fantastic collection of sources, your own notes, articles, research that really paint a vivid picture of this section. It's a truly complex stretch of the book, isn't it? Just overflowing with legal accusations, sharp moral judgments, these mythological echoes, and just a dizzying chorus of Dublin voices. Our mission today, as always, is to navigate this rich tapestry, try to untangle the fascinating connections Joyce weaves, and, extract the most important nuggets of insight that might illuminate the central mystery surrounding our enigmatic protagonist, HCE.
Exactly. And these pages, they really present this swirling vortex of public opinion and conflicting testimonies regarding HCE. It's very much like a fragmented historical record, actually. We encounter this whole cast of witnesses, each offering their highly subjective, often, wildly contradictory accounts of his alleged misdeeds, with a particular focus, as you know, on a certain assault. What's truly fascinating here, I think, is that Joyce isn't really aiming for a single objective truth. Not at all. Instead, he's showing us the kaleidoscopic nature of reputation, rumor, and collective memory in his Dublin. So yeah, prepare for a journey through the whispers of a city, the long shadows of ancient myths, and the surprising echoes of everyday life, all woven into a narrative that constantly challenges our very notion of certainty.
That's a perfect way to set the scene. Let's jump right into the thick of it then. Focusing on the sheer weight of accusation and public scrutiny that opens these pages, the very first lines hit us with this really stark pronouncement. It would be a scarlet shame to Jailaheen in lockup. This isn't just any kind of shame, is it? What does Joyce immediately convey by invoking Scarlet right there in connection with HCE?
Oh, it's instantly evocative, isn't it? Scarlet carries such deeply ingrained historical and moral weight. Traditionally, it's associated with, heinous offenses, public condemnation, and famously with prostitution or harlots. Think of the Scarlet Letter. By opening with this, Joyce doesn't just suggest HCE is accused, he implies a public shaming of the highest order. It's like he's already tainting HCE with this sense of moral corruption before we even fully understand the charges. It's a powerful and immediate strike against his character, setting a tone of intense public judgment right from the get-go.
And Joyce wastes absolutely no time layering on the complexity. Following that pronouncement, we get this really intriguing phrase. It is ever too late to whistle when Phyllis floods her stable. It sounds like a proverb, but it's clearly got that Joycean twist. Can you unpack this one for us?
Absolutely. Yeah, on the surface, it's a play on the common proverb, it's too late to shut the stable door after the horse is bolted, right? That universal warning about missed opportunities. But Joyce, in his typical fashion, takes it much, much further. Whistle here cleverly plays on whiz, meaning, to urinate, and introduces the classical figure of Phyllis. Now, in notes from Joyce's own library, there's a reference to this Phyllis, wishing to be thought a virgin despite making water often. This saucy, almost scatological detail, when combined with the image of Hercules cleaning the Augean stables by flooding them, suggests this huge Herculean effort to deal with an embarrassing, perhaps sexually scandalous situation. So the core insight here is that HCE's alleged indiscretion, whatever it was, it's already out in the open. Any attempts to cover it up and minimize the damage are now utterly futile. The public perception is already solidified against him, likely in a way that's both morally condemned and sexually charged.
And it's not just an abstract shame. Joyce grounds it in a very specific contemporary context. This sentiment, we see in our sources, directly echoes a real-life legal drama of Joyce's time. The notorious 1922 Daily Sketch article concerning a petition for the reprieve of Bywaters, who was involved in that sensational murder case. A barmaid in that article was quoted as saying, "It would be a shame if Bywaters died." So right away, Joyce connects HCE's kind of nebulous accusations to a specific, widely discussed scandal, making his public shaming resonate with his readers' immediate world.
That direct link is absolutely crucial. It grounds the Wake sprawling narrative in concrete reality. And building on that, the accusation itself comes as was proposed to him by the Seddon's creature. Now, the mention of Seddon immediately brings to mind an English murderer, which, casts the accuser in a highly questionable light.
Right, hardly a reliable source for moral judgment.
Exactly. They're hardly credible. And the language continues to be incredibly suggestive, deepening the mystery around the alleged act. The term meretrix, for instance, subtly plays on meretrix, which is Latin for prostitute or whore, strongly implying a sexual transgression.
And then Joyce really pushes the envelope with revolver her. That's a wordplay that certainly grabs your attention.
Oh, it's a perfect example of his dense, suggestive layering. Revolver her blends revolver with vulva.
Wow.
So it suggests both a firearm discharge, hinting at violence, and a sexual going off or orgasm. So the alleged act is just steeped in both sexual and violent undertones. It creates a very unsettling image. The phrase, being an orphan and enjoying such wicked ilth, then adds another layer of complexity. It could be genuine sympathy for someone suffering from ill-being or bad health, or it could be a deeply ironic pity given the nature of the alleged Mary tricks. It's a very complex, emotional, and moral landscape Joyce paints around this initial, very shadowy accusation.
Fascinating how much is packed into just those few lines. As these accusations continue to mount, we start to hear from a range of other Dublin voices. Some equally dubious, others offering surprisingly harsh judgments. Amidst all this, there's an unexpected cheer that erupts. Well done, drum colloquial. This feels like a momentary shift, doesn't it? Like a pause in the condemnation.
It does, yeah. Drum colloquial is a wonderfully resonant nod to drum colloquial, which is Dublin's original Irish name, meaning brow of a hazelwood. It's as if the ancient foundational identity of the city itself is momentarily weighing in, connecting HCE's very personal, very scandalous story to the deep historical roots of Dublin. It momentarily elevates the local gossip to something almost mythic, rooting his story in the very ground beneath the city.
That sense of local Dublin identity continues, with a touch of sentimentality even. We then hear, Kitty Turtle is proud of you, a clear allusion to an air from Thomas More's Oh, Blame Not the Bard.
Yeah.
So it hints at artistic and national sentiment being entwined with this public drama. But then, almost comically, an administrative voice intrudes with the mention of a BOT official, referring to the Board of Trade. That juxtaposition is classic Joyce, isn't it? The poetic and the bureaucratic side by side.
It is, and it's highly effective. You have the romantic, artistic ideal of Irish identity colliding head-on with the mundane, bureaucratic reality of everyday life. It's like a microcosm of the disparate elements that make up public opinion in Dublin, the lofty and the administrative, all commenting on HCE. Following this, we get the daughters Benkleter murmured in uniswoon, Golfergill history legs. Now, this is a richly layered phrase. Daughters also evokes the Danish underbenkleter or drawers. They're murmuring in unison and a swoon, suggesting a collective, almost theatrical, emotional response. Their utterance combines God forgives his jury with a possible reference to a jury leg, which is slang for a wooden leg. So we're getting this blend of sympathy, perhaps judgment, and even a hint of pity over a physical flaw or maybe a past legal outcome. It's a collective gasp that's both empathetic and critical, further muddying the waters of HCE's public image.
That blend of empathy and judgment makes for a truly complex reaction. But then the tone shifts dramatically again with the voice of Brian Linsky, the cub cursor. He's questioned at his shouting box, Bologna Breget. Linsky references Brian O'Lan, an Irish ballad hero, and our notes point to a 1922-23 notebook entry about a boy curser, a boy thief who cursed a magistrate. And Bologna Breget, a townland in County Down, meaning town of the pot ale, and on a braggart, suggests a boastful, probably drunken setting. This character is clearly not holding back.
Not at all. His snappy comeback is shockingly aggressive and frankly misogynistic. I am for caveman chase and Sahara sex, burk you. Them two bitches ought to be leashed, cane 'em. Up hog and whore hunt. This is a direct and brutal reference to a societal idea prevalent in Joyce's time of caveman sex, that crude, violent image of clubbing a woman and dragging her away.
Right, I remember reading about that context.
Yeah, Joyce even noted a 1922 Daily Sketch article about the child star Jackie Coogan believing in a caveman attitude to women. Burk means to kill by suffocation, and leashed, combined with canum, which is Latin for beware the dog, brings in this animalistic violence and control, even evoking darker historical echoes of, well, lynching. The phrase up hog and whore hunt simply adds to this primal, aggressive imagery. The key insight here is the raw, visceral hatred and extreme misogyny that HCE's alleged actions provoke in some segments of the public. It reveals a truly disturbing undercurrent of public opinion.
That's a powerful and disturbing image. It seems the public scrutiny isn't limited to just local gossip and legal drama, though. What spiritual and even global dimensions does Joyce bring into play next?
Well, the narrative takes a fascinating turn. We encounter a would-be martyr who is attending on Sanat Ascetus, where he is being taught to wear bracelets. Now, Sanat Ascetus cleverly refers to the hermit asceta who recognized the newborn Buddha, blending Sanatas, meaning health or sanity, with the saintly, almost ascetic imagery. But then, the twist. The bracelets are slang for handcuffs, directly linking the martyr's spiritual aspiration and suffering to worldly imprisonment.
So it's a cynical contrast.
A stark, cynical contrast, yes, hinting at the commodification or perhaps the corruption of spiritual figures.
And this martyr makes a rather grand, if ultimately dismissed, pronouncement.
Indeed. This martyr then, quote, revealed the undoubted fact that, so long as Sankey-Moody played his mango tricks under the Mr. Tree, with shady apsaras sheltering in his lease license, there would be fights all over Cuxhaven. Okay, so Sankey-Moody cleverly evokes both Sankey and Moody, those 19th century American evangelists, and Sakyamuni, Gautama Buddha. Joyce is presenting Buddha here almost as a religious huckster, someone performing mango tricks, those Indian juggling tricks where a mango tree appears to grow rapidly out of nothing.
Right, the famous trick.
Exactly. And this image directly relates to Buddha meditating under a tree, surrounded by shady apsaras, celestial nymphs who, in myth, entertain Buddha, symbolizing temptation. The shadower's Torah-fried is a brilliant Joycean portmanteau. It blends terrified, horrified, and even roasted by Thor's lightning, all under the interdiction, which combines interdiction with Indra's thunderbolts. It's a fusion of terror, divine power from Norse and Indian mythologies, and the very specific image of being struck. And the consequence of all this spiritual spectacle and temptation. Fights all over Cuxhaven, a German port famous for a WWI air raid, injecting a global warlike dimension into this spiritual carnival scene. Then, a dismissive Tosh just caps it all off, branding it as nonsense. The key insight here is Joyce's rather cynical portrayal of spiritual figures being reduced to performers, their sacred acts reinterpreted as mere tricks or provocations. It suggests that even divinity isn't immune from the messy, contentious nature of human affairs, leading to conflict on a global scale.
So even profound spiritual narratives are dragged into the mud of human scandal and conflict, reinterpreted as mere tricks. That's quite something. Following this, Missioner Ida Wombwell, the 17-year-old revivalist, who was a real young Methodist preacher from the 1920s, offers her take.
That perpendicular person is a brut, but a magnificent brut. Her choice of words is loaded, especially perpendicular. What's going on there?
Perpendicular is certainly a charged word, isn't it?
Oh.
It implies erectness, which immediately adds a sexual dimension to her observation. And brute refers not just to a brute and animalistic man, but also to Brute, the legendary founder of Britain, and even to unsweetened champagne.
Oh, right, like brute champagne. Exactly. And the irony is, as a revivalist, she'd likely be a prohibitionist, creating this fascinating contrast where she might disapprove of the fizz, but is still drawn to the raw power of the brute. She calls him a brute, but then elevates him to magnificent, suggesting a kind of grudging admiration for his primal power even in his alleged transgressions. It highlights the complex, often contradictory ways HCE is perceived, both condemned and admired for his forceful nature.
And we get an almost antipodal view next from Caligula, who is Mr. Dan McGrath, a bookmaker well known to Australian perusers of the Sydney Parade Bulletin. This is a nod to the Sydney Bulletin, with Australia being a proposed name for East Australia. This bookmaker is connected to the organizers of the Irish Hospital sweepstake. His pronouncement is cryptic. Striving's teddy, hoping to mellow, where splash. What are we to make of this distant yet equally judgmental voice?
It's classic Joyce, packing multiple meanings into a brief utterance. Striving to D, hoping to mellow is wordplay on striving today, happening tomorrow, and maybe arriving today, opening tomorrow. Where splash then brings in the idea of beware, perhaps beware the splash, maybe the splash of money from the sweepstakes or the splash of news.
Hard to say.
Very. And naming him Caligula, the Roman emperor known for his eccentricities and cruelty, whose name Caligula means little boot, ties into the bookmaker-bootmaker motif that runs through the wake. This remote yet powerful voice underscores how HCE's reputation extends globally, filtered through different cultural lenses, always with a hint of unpredictable, almost tyrannical character. The takeaway here is that HCE's story is not just a local Dublin affair. It echoes across continents and social strata, universally judged, yet always remaining ambiguous.
That global reach really emphasizes the scale of HCE's reputation, doesn't it? Now, let's transition into a full chorus of voices and shifting narratives as the Dublin echo chamber continues its cacophony. We hear the term cobbler. What's Joyce doing with this seemingly simple word? It feels loaded.
Cobbler is wonderfully polysemous here, yeah. In Australian colloquialism, it means mate or close friend, which is interesting given the previous Australian connection, but it also refers to a bootmaker or a clumsy workman, and even a cabler, someone who sends a cable message. It introduces a common, almost folksy voice, but one already laden with multiple potential identities, suggesting that even ordinary people in Dublin carry layers of meaning and associations.
This is then followed by El Kaplan Bykout, a character that blends El Capitan with Captain Boycott, the Irish land agent famous for ostracism, and even Bycoat, possibly for a Norwegian captain. He sings, "We have meat too hourly, madda dear." That phrase is remarkably clever, weaving in several meanings, isn't it?
It truly is. It cleverly weaves in met too early or met too hourly and matador. Our sources suggest it possibly alludes to Joyce's famous, possibly apocryphal first conversation with Yeats, where Joyce is said to have declared, "I have met you too late, you are too old."
Oh, really? That connection.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
It also carried the undertone of a Don Juan figure dismissing a too young damsel, adding another layer of sexual and age-related dynamics to the narrative. So the public discourse about HCE isn't just accusations. It's also filled with these coded allusions to famous literary encounters and romantic conquests, further complicating the picture of his character.
Then we hear from Dan Michaeljohn, precentor of SS Smack and Ollies, who was probeverbal with his upsedexit. Mutatis mutandis. A precentor is a choir leader, suggesting a formal, almost liturgical pronouncement amidst all this chaos, and SS Smack and Ollies refers to the Saints Michael and John Church, built on the site of the former Smock Alley Theatre, which was Dublin's principal theatre for over a century. This really grounds the narrative firmly in a historic Dublin landmark, bringing an institutional voice into the mix.
Yes, and that institutional voice is framed with very specific linguistic choices. Probeverbal puns on proverbial, and the Latin proba verba, meaning honest words. It suggests a desire for truth or a pronouncement that sounds true, even if it's wrapped in ambiguity. Upseduxit combines the reassuring upsedaisy, often used when lifting a child, with the Latin ipsedixit, a dogmatic assertion. This implies a confident, almost childishly assured pronouncement from this formal figure. Finally, mutatis mutandis is Latin for "with the necessary changes having been made," or "he who was to be changed having been changed." This isn't just an academic flourish. It signals to us, the readers, the inherent fluidity of truth and the necessity of continually reevaluating narratives. It's a direct message from Joyce. Don't take anything as fixed.
That's a crucial point for understanding the wake. Now let's dive into a wonderfully raucous interaction involving Lady Morgan and the Dirty Dubs. We encounter Duran's Lord, Sniffpox, and Morgan's Lady, Flatterfun. Sniffpox alludes to a snuffbox, and Morgan's Lady is Lady Morgan, a prominent 19th century Irish novelist, often described as fluttering a huge green fan, hence Flatterfun. They took sides and crossed and bowed to each other's views and recrossed themselves. This suggests a complex social dance, doesn't it?
It's a beautifully choreographed social and intellectual dance. They took sides, but also engaged in corsi e ricorsi, Vico's historical cycles, that idea that history repeats itself, and even crossbow, hinting at complex, perhaps even antagonistic interactions. It's a theatrical, almost ritualistic display of taking and retaking positions in the public square. And this sets the stage for a very lively and suggestive interaction that follows. The Dirty Dubs up in their flies, went too free, echoed the Danely Drabs down in their senities, unamona.
That's a loaded sequence. Can you break down the layers of Dirty Dubs and Danely Drabs for us? What's really going on there?
Certainly. Dirty Dubs refers to the Dublin militia, from an anecdote about their clumsy performance as supers, for echo effects in an opera at the Theatre Royal. It also links to the affectionate epithet, "Dear Dirty Dublin," which was actually attributed to Lady Morgan herself.
Oh, interesting connection.
Yeah. Up in their flies is a playful, suggestive reference to opening trouser flies, often associated with indecency. But flies also refers to the theater space above the stage, where scenery is hung, adding a theatrical dimension to their going too free. The Danely Drabs, meaning dainty or daily whores or prostitutes, down in their senities, a blend of obscenities, scenery, and Latin scanite for actresses, respond. This creates a provocative interplay. The Dublin males are acting freely, maybe indecently, and the women are either pulling down their scanties in response or echoing their sentiments in a sexually suggestive way. The Triestine Italian slang unamona, meaning silly cunt, adds a coarse, overtly suggestive tone to the whole exchange. The core insight here is that public discourse around HEE is raw, sexually charged, and theatrical, drawing on Dublin's historical associations with both boisterous performance and casual indecency.
It's a raucous, sexually charged exchange that truly captures the boisterous public discourse. But then the tone shifts again. We meet Sylvia Silence, the girl detective. She's introduced as Minerva, but by now one hears turtlings all over Dublin. This figure is clearly one of wisdom and inquiry, with Minerva combining Latin memenici, to remember, with Minerva, the Roman goddess of wisdom. Yet Turtlelings, turtle doves, all over Dublin, a play on Dublin, suggest that despite her detective persona, rumors about her personal life or love interests are also abounding. There's a delightful tension here, isn't there?
There absolutely is. It's a classic Joycean juxtaposition. The intellectual pursuit of truth constantly undermined or complicated by the inescapable tide of gossip and personal speculation. This information is delivered to her in her cozy-dozy bachelor's flat, quite overlooking John O'Dream's news. Cozy-dozy evokes a comfortable, sleepy setting, while bachelors hints at her independent, almost male-like bachelor lifestyle, or perhaps her intention to lure bachelors. John O'Dream's views evokes Hamlet's stupid, dreamy fellow, a daydreamer, but also links to Muse, the goddesses of memory and inspiration, hinting at the creative and interpretive nature of her work. Leaning back in her really truly easy chair, she queries restfully through her vowel-threaded syllables. Have you of you thought repout to that shew greatness was his tragedy? This iconic phrase, greatness was his tragedy, Joyce noted as being from J. Caesar, alluding to Julius Caesar. Her speech, marked by rhoticism, pronouncing R as W, gives her this distinctive, almost childlike yet remarkably sharp and insightful voice.
But her considered judgment is anything but childish or naive. She pronounces, "Nevertheless, according to my considered attitudes, for this act he should pay the full penalty, pending pursuance, as Pew subsec. 32, Section 11 of the CLA Act 1885, anything in this act to the contrary notwithstanding." This echoes a Daily Sketch article regarding Bywaters' penalty, demanding the full penalty. And crucially, our sources highlight that the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1885, specifically Section 11, that was the act under which Oscar Wilde was tried for gross indecency. This legal reference firmly connects HCE's alleged transgressions to famous cases of public morality and homosexual scandal. What does this tell us about the societal hypocrisy Joyce is hinting at here?
It's a profound and damning connection. By linking HCE's vague act to the very law that brought down Oscar Wilde, Joyce immediately injects a layer of severe societal judgment and hypocrisy. It suggests that HCE's alleged moral failings are not just personal, but touch upon the anxieties and repressions of the entire society, particularly around sexuality. The girl detective, despite her seemingly innocent voice, becomes an instrument of this harsh social condemnation, demanding the ultimate penalty for transgressions that recall notorious public scandals. The core insight is that HCE, like Wilde, becomes a lightning rod for societal anxieties about morality and sexuality, facing severe judgment that often disproportionately targets individuals for collective unease.
Speaking of downfalls, Jarly Jilk then offers a commentary that perfectly captures this sense of public disgrace. Jarly Jilk began to silk, for he couldn't get home to jealousy, but ended with, "He's got the sack that helped him molt in stench of his gladsome rags." This passage lampoons Sir Charles Bilk, a Gladstonian MP who was ruined by a divorce scandal similar to Parnell. Silk is a play on sulk, implying his disgrace. "He's got the sack" is a colloquialism for being fired. And the imagery of molten stench of his gladsome rags suggests wearing smelly sackcloth instead of fine clothes, or glad rags, which could also pun on a Gladstone bag for the prosperous traveler. What a powerful symbol of public disgrace.
It is. It's a very visceral image of public humiliation and professional ruin. The transformation from gladsome rags to stench of sackcloth visually symbolizes the stripping away of his former status, his prosperity, and his public esteem. This is another crucial nugget of insight. In Joyce and Dublin, even powerful public figures are vulnerable to devastating scandal that leads to a swift and total loss of reputation and standing, leaving them metaphorically and perhaps literally in rags.
The public conversation around HCE continues to swirl. And now we turn to the Sailor's Confession, featuring Meagher, Cuesta, and Puella. The scene is quite vivid. Meagher, a naval rating, seated on one of the granite cromlech sets of our new fish shambles for the usual aerating after the ever-popular act, with whom were Cuesta and Puella, Picante and Quate. This scene, set on granite sets or paving stones, possibly in Dublin's Fishamble Street, is explicitly linked to a 1922 Daily Sketch article about a sailor on the embankment discussing the Bywaters case. Meagher is identified in Joyce's notes as a naval enlisted man and a fancy man or womanizer. Aerating suggests aeration or exposure to air, but also implies eating the air, living on promises, or maybe smoking after sex, what's implied by the ever-popular act, and who are these two women?
The ever-popular act is very strongly implied to be sex, given the context of a fancy man, and the relaxed, almost post-coital atmosphere suggested by aerating. Cuesta and Puella are brilliantly introduced as Italian this and Latin girl, directly from Verdi's Cuesta o Quella, this woman or that. This immediately highlights the theme of interchangeable women or multiple partners, and Joyce's recurring PQ split motif for his female characters. One of them had a cold in her brain, while the other felt a sink in her stomach, referring to a sinking feeling in her stomach. It links their physical sensations to their perspectives on the situation. The core insight here is that the accusations against HEE are constantly refracted through a male, often womanizing perspective, where women are seen as interchangeable objects of desire and their experiences are reduced to physical sensations rather than complex emotions.
So a very male-centric, almost dismissive viewpoint. Our sailor, although near-vanished himself, a blend of near-vanished and nirvana, suggesting a state of spiritual exhaustion or emptiness, is encouraged by one of his co-affiants to get your breath, Walt, and gobbet. He is then chidden by her fastra to saddle up your pants, Neville, thus Cor replied to her other's thanks-kissing. Chidden means reproved or scolded, and his fastra is this complex blend of several languages and familial terms. What's the significance of this blend and the instruction to saddle up your pants?
The complex blend in fastra, mixing Swedish fastra, ants, faster sister, foster sister, Spanish sastra, tailoress, and Russian sestra, sister, is a classic Joycean technique. It suggests a diverse array of female influences and roles, perhaps even echoing the multiple female figures surrounding HCE. The instruction to saddle up your pants implies he's disheveled and needs to pull up his pants, navel echoing navel rating. This moment of public disarray and private scolding adds to the informal, gossipy atmosphere, showing how even intimate moments are subject to observation and judgment. It's a vivid snapshot of the chaotic, multi-voiced Dublin.
So the sailor then responds, laying out his version of blame. I lay my 2 finger buttons, fiancé meager, he speaks. He was to blame about your 2 velvet thighs up Horniman's Hill, as Hook and I blame him or any other pissman. But I also think Piluwali, by the siege of his trousers, there was someone else behind it. You bet your bottom blarneys about their 3 drummers down Keezer's Lane. Trite. Okay. I lay my 2 finger buttons refers to an Egyptian myth ritual of pressing fingers on deceased lips, and also slang for I lay a bob. Velvet thighs up Horniman's Hill evokes Annie Horniman, the patroness of the Abbey Theatre, and also horny or lecherous, explicitly linking HCE to impropriety with 2 girls. And Hook and I is a dress fastener, also slang for arm in arm and a pun on how can I. Pissman combines Latin pisces, fish, and Irish pistava, further emphasizing sexual themes in a male perspective. He's essentially saying who could blame him in this situation.
Precisely.
Yeah.
This sailor is trying to deflect blame, using a common male rationale. He continues by saying, by the siege of his trousers, there was someone else behind it. Siege of his trousers suggests the fit or state of HCE's clothing as evidence, perhaps implying an erection or disarray, a very crude and physical way of assessing guilt. The phrase, someone else behind it, points to a larger conspiracy, further deflecting blame from HCE. You bet your bottom blarneys combines bet your bottom dollar, absolute certainty, with botten, store-bought, and blarneys, which are suggested to mean trousers, given that Blarney doeskin trousers were advertised. Finally, 3 drummers down Keezer's Lane is a fascinating blend. Drummers can refer to military drummers, traveling salesmen, or even trousers makers in slang. Keezer's Lane in medieval Dublin was vulgarly named Kissar's Lane. This implicates 3 other men in the alleged incident, adding immense complexity to the blame. The abrupt trite at the end just dismisses this convoluted account as commonplace, as if this kind of thing happens all the time. The core insight from this sailor's confession is how rumors about HCE are filtered through a decidedly male, sexually charged lens, attempting to assign blame and responsibility while also suggesting a wider conspiracy. It's messy, multifaceted, and highly unreliable, yet it's exactly the kind of narrative Joyce wants us to grapple with, the everyday scandal as an epic.
What a fantastic summary of that dense exchange. This brings us to a pivotal moment where the narrative pivots sharply, immediately questioning the validity of all we've just heard. It asks, be these mere merchant tailors' fablings of a race referend with oddman rex? This isn't just a simple question, is it? It casts doubt on everything.
It absolutely does. It asks if these stories are merely mere merchant tailors' fables, suggesting they're akin to fiction or tall tales, much like sailors' yarns. It evokes the merchant tailors' guild, but also anticipates a sailor-tailor conflict, implying a professional rivalry in storytelling itself. This immediately creates an epistemological challenge for the reader. Can we trust any of these accounts? The oddman rex refers to the odd-numbered decision-maker, a king from Oedipus Rex, and referent is that to which reference is made. It alludes to a 1924 Irish Statesman article about how a referendum can make the odd man king. So Joyce is questioning whether a decisive truth can ever be found amidst such conflicting accounts, and how collective opinion can elevate a single, potentially unreliable narrative to a position of authority. This directly leads to another crucial question. is now all seen, heard, then forgotten. This echoes Marie Antoinette's quote, "I have seen it all, heard it all, and forgotten it all," regarding the French Revolution. It powerfully highlights the ephemeral nature of public memory and the profound difficulty of establishing any stable historical truth, especially when so many voices are vying for attention.
And the speaker continues by asking if so diversified outrages were planned and partly carried out against so staunch a covenanter, if it be true, then any of those recorded ever took place. The question is couched in the context of this leaden age of letters. That's a fascinating term. What's implied there?
It is a brilliant, self-aware meta-commentary from Joyce. It's a pun on the Golden Age, where Saturn, in alchemy, equated to lead. So it implies a dull, uninspired literary era, contrasting sharply with the rich, complex narratives that Joyce himself is creating. It critiques the tendency of some reporters or chroniclers to use the truth but sparingly, forcing us to reflect on the immense responsibility of those who record and transmit history. The core insight here is that Joyce, through this self-reflection, directly challenges the reader to critically evaluate the truth claims of all narratives, including his own, in an era where information is abundant but truth is elusive.
Moving from these questions of truth and memory, the narrative transitions to the concept of the city of refuge. Joyce paints a picture of Dublin itself, the seventh city, Urovivla, his citadel of refuge. This immediately links Dublin, often called the seventh city of Christendom, to Urovila, the jungle where Buddha attained enlightenment. Urovivla also contains the Danish word viv, meaning wife. This citadel of refuge is a powerful biblical reference to cities of asylum for those accused of accidental manslaughter. What does this suggest about HCE's current state and hopes?
It's a profound shift, isn't it? HCE is no longer just a figure of scandal, but a Hejrite, a clear reference to Muhammad's Hijra, his flight to Medina seeking sanctuary. He has fled beyond the outbrave gales of Adriatic, meaning the outbrave gales of the Adriatic Sea near Trieste, escaping past turmoil. He's depicted changing clothes with a baggermeister, suggesting he's changing clothes with a burgermeister or mayor. It implies disguise and perhaps social climbing, trying to blend in or even elevate his status in his escape. It's a flight from both literal storms and metaphorical storms of public opinion, a desperate search for anonymity and a fresh start.
What's particularly poignant about his flight is its silenciousement under night's alta sonority, a beautiful image drawing from Harold's La Vie du Buddha, where Buddha's horse made no noise during his escape. Alta sonority implies a deep, resonant, yet utterly silent night. He travels ship alone, a raven of the wave, recalling the raven flags of Danish Vikings, a powerful symbol of journey and perhaps a harbinger of doom fleeing from the Osmans' Dirtby on the Old Vic, referring to the Osman or Vikings in Oxmantown, Dublin, and the Old Vic Theatre in London. This emphasizes his journey across water and his escape from his past. And what is the ultimate purpose of this arduous flight?
His goal is redemptive, to forget in expiating manslaughter, and rebirthing in remerriment out of dead sickness to divine prevenance. This covers the four Viconian stages: death, symbolized by manslaughter, rebirth, and divine providence or foresight. Dead sickness alludes to Kierkegaard's profound concept of sickness unto death, adding a philosophical depth to his internal turmoil and desire for renewal. It's a grand vision of spiritual and personal transformation. His ultimate goal in this vision of escape and spiritual renewal is to league his lot palm and pat with a papishi. Papishi is a derogatory term for a Roman Catholic woman, but she also means fairy in Anglo-Irish, adding a mystical dimension. The subsequent lines are direct, almost ritualistic marriage vows. For mine guinea I thee gift take, and bind my hosenband I thee halter. This blends Danish min kvinde, my woman and gift, to marry, with references to a garter, hosenband, and a halter for restraining animals or hanging. It creates a complex, almost contradictory image of union and constraint, a binding contract that promises both solace and confinement. The core insight here is that HCE's flight is an attempt at profound personal and spiritual renewal, seeking to shed his past through repentance and a new marital union. Yet this new bond itself contains elements of both devotion and inescapable constraint.
But this supposed land of refuge isn't quite what it seems, is it? We hear of Ireland's betrayal and HCE's ultimate fate. He flees to the Waistow land, a lotus land, a luctuous land, Emerald de Lewum, the peasant pastured. This describes Ireland as T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, a lotus land inducing idleness and forgetfulness, and a luxurious or mournful Emerald Isle, here called Emerald de Lewum, or Ireland as the new Troy, hinting at its legendary and tragic destiny. So his hopeful flight lands him in a land of sorrow.
Indeed, a land already burdened with its own history and sorrows. And in this land, by the fourth commandment with promise, His days apostolic were to be long by the abundant mercy of him which thundereth from on high. This refers to the commandment to honor father and mother and the promise of long life. But it also links to King Edgar's forged charter claiming Dublin by abundant mercy, highlighting the blend of divine law and historical, often dubious claims of authority. Yet the land itself turns against him.
Yes, despite the divine promise, the very land he sought refuge in murmured would rise against him with all which in them were, franchisables and inhabitants, Astea as agora, hilats filats, do him hurt, poor jink, ghostly following bodily, as were he made a curse for them. Franchisables and inhabitants cleverly distinguishes between those with voting rights and other residents, showing the full spectrum of societal opposition. Astea as agora refers to Greek towns and marketplaces, indicating the public nature of this animosity. Hilats filats combines helots, or serfs, with the Greek philos, meaning loving, revealing the internal conflict and deep-seated resentment within the populace. He becomes, quite literally, a curse for them, referencing Galatians 3.13, Christ being made a curse for us. What's the profound reversal happening here?
It's a dramatic reversal, where the sought-after Savior, the one seeking redemption, becomes the object of collective damnation. He's made a scapegoat. This collective condemnation is further articulated. The corruptible lay quick, all saints of incorruption of a holy nation, the common or error-in-garden castaway, in red resurrection to condemn so they might convince him, first Pharaoh, Humphreys Cheops Exarchus, of their proper sins. This passage is incredibly rich with biblical allusions, drawing from Corinthians 15.53, this corruptible must put on incorruption, and the concept of a holy nation, referring to Jews or Christians. The common or garden castaway, evoking Adam and Eve cast out from the Garden of Eden, or the Garden of Aaron, Wicklow, is set against resurrection imagery. But here, resurrection is not for salvation, but for condemnation. HCE is linked to first Pharaoh, Humphreys Cheops Exarchus, a combination of HCE, Cheops the pyramid builder, and Agarkos, meaning leader or commander, identifying him as an ancient, primordial figure. He is to be convicted not just of his own transgressions, but of their proper sins, implying a powerful projection of collective guilt onto him. The key insight here is how HCE, in his attempt at redemption, becomes a universal scapegoat, burdened by the collective sins and projections of an entire nation. His individual fate mirrors the larger, often conflicted identity of Ireland itself.
So, HCE becomes the ancient primordial scapegoat for an entire nation's perceived failings. Despite all this overwhelming condemnation, business bred to speak with a stiff upper lip. The man we wot of took little short of fighting chances, but for all that he or his care were subjected to the horrors of the premier terror of Ireland, perhaps. This portrays HCE as a stoic, business-minded individual, maintaining a stiff upper lip, but ultimately one who still faced the first terror of Ireland, or Ireland, perhaps fleeting for the time being per aura. What does this resilience tell us about his character amidst such pervasive fear?
It's a testament to his enduring, almost mythic resilience in the face of overwhelming societal pressure and collective condemnation. Despite being burdened by the sins of others, HCE attempts to maintain a stoic, almost defiant composure. But the designation Ireland subtly underscores that this terror is not just external. It's deeply ingrained in the very fabric of the land and its history, fraught with mistakes and misinterpretations. The core insight is that HCE's stoic endurance highlights the pervasive, almost existential fear and flawed judgment that he, and by extension Ireland, must constantly contend with, a terror born not just of external threats, but internal errors.
Now, we shift into a truly fascinating section titled The Ambiguous Assault: Two Versions of a Non-True Story. This immediately signals that what we're about to read is not straightforward. It opens with this grand, almost liturgical statement. We seem to us, the real us, to be reading our Amenti in the 6th sealed chapter of the Going Forth by Black. This immediately draws from the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead, whose ancient title is Chapters of Coming Forth by Day, with Amenti referring to the underworld. What's the significance of the real us in this underworld imagery?
It's a powerful and direct address to us, the readers. The real us employs the royal plural, making the reader a direct participant, a part of this profound judgment, as if we too are journeying through this underworld narrative. The 6th sealed chapter alludes to the 6 seals on Tutankhamun's tomb in chapter 6 of Budge's Book of the Dead, which describes figures doing work for a man in the underworld. This firmly connects the narrative to ancient Egyptian eschatology and the idea of judgment, framing this entire section as a second, perhaps even more ancient or profound, version of the assault. The core insight here is that Joyce elevates HCE's story from mere Dublin gossip to a timeless, almost ritualistic judgment, inviting us to be active participants in sifting through this spectral evidence.
So we're not just passive listeners, we're judges in this underworld court. We then encounter the first account of the assault. It begins. It was after the show at Wednesbury that one tall man, humping a suspicious parcel when returning late amid a dense particular on his home way from the second house of the Boar and Burgess Christie Menestrels by the old spot, Roy's Corner, had a Barkis revolver placed to his face with the words, "You're shot, Major." Okay, Wednesbury is an English market town. The humping a suspicious parcel links to Bloom in Circe in Ulysses, whose butcher's parcel is suspected of being a bomb, immediately creating a sense of foreboding. And dense particular refers to London particular or London fog, creating a murky, disorienting atmosphere. What else stands out in this initial description?
The setting is deliberately theatrical and disorienting. Second house refers to a second performance, but also evokes Habat Hashani, the Second Temple period in Jewish history, or simply a pub, blending the sacred and the profane. Boar and Burgess Christie Menestrels refers to famous minstrel troupes, highlighting the performative and almost farcical aspect of this narrative, as if the assault itself is a staged act.
Right, like a performance.
Exactly. Barkis revolver is a pistol, Barker, playing on Barkis as Willing, from Dickens' David Copperfield, injecting a note of dark humor. The assailant's words, "You're shot, Major," directly echo a 1924 Connaught Tribune report about an incident where a guard was threatened. Major also subtly connects to mayor, further blurring identities between a military figure and a civic leader. The core insight here is that this account, despite its specific details, is deliberately ambiguous and theatrical, placing HCE in a fog of uncertain identity and threat, where reality blurs with performance and hearsay.
And the motive for this attack, it's by an unknowable assailant masked against whom he had been jealous over, Lotta Crabtree or Pomona Evelyn. Lotta Crabtree, a 19th century American entertainer, and Pomona Evelyn, the Roman goddess of fruit and play on Eve, are variations on the theme of the two girls. This points to sexual rivalry and illicit desires as the driving force behind the assault, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. This recurring motif of the two girls in various guises firmly anchors the alleged assault in a narrative of sexual jealousy and transgression, suggesting HCE is embroiled in a classic love triangle or a situation involving multiple women. It's a timeless motive for conflict, once again linking HCE's personal drama to universal human passions and follies.
So the waylayer's demands add another layer of complexity. The assailant is not a localize of diocesan or even of the Glendalough, but hailing for the prow of Little Britain. This means the waylayer is not local to Dublin villages like Lucan or Chapelizod or the Glendalough, but comes from Little Britain, which can refer to Brittany or Armorica, the prow of France, or even Ireland itself, suggesting an outsider or a more ambiguous origin. He's called the crosshopper, which combines crowthumper, a pejorative for a devout Roman Catholic, with grasshopper and possibly sap, a weapon. He then boasts of his weaponry, having Reed's cutlass scent blade, referencing Reed & Co., Dublin Cutlers, providing a cutlass blade or knife, and a loaded Hobson's, playing on Hobson's choice, take it or leave it, but also implying a pistol or two fists. What's the immediate effect of this detailed description of the waylayer and his armaments?
It immediately establishes a menacing, chaotic atmosphere, emphasizing the violence and the high stakes of the encounter. The waylayer presents these chilling twin alternatives. Either he would surely shoot her, the amp, by pistol, or, failing of such, bash and patch his blank face beyond recognition. Ant here is slang for a prostitute, and pistol is slang for a penis. Patch is Elizabethan slang for a fool. This is a violently sexually charged threat, leaving HCE with an impossible, brutal choice between harming an innocent or complicit woman and suffering a disfiguring assault himself. And then the waylayer pointedly asked with Gaelish Gaul Wadker Blizzard's business Thornton had with that Keynes fender. Gaelish Gaul, Gael Gaul is Civius Lude, and Wadker Blizzard's, Vodka White and Blazes, create a chaotic, drunken atmosphere. Thornton and Kane are originals of characters from Joyce's Ulysses, Tom Kernan and Martin Cunningham, cronies of John Joyce.
Ah, the Ulysses connection again.
Yes. And the fender is key here. A fire guard, but also puns on offender or defender. The suspicious parcel from earlier is heavily implied to be this very fender. The core insight here is that the assault is depicted as a grotesque, sexually charged dilemma, where HCE is caught between protecting a vulnerable woman and preserving his own identity, all fueled by a drunken, accusatory mob and the symbolic weight of objects.
So this first account is truly dark and ambiguous, but then the narrator intervenes with an outright dismissal. But how transparently non-true, gentle writer. His feat, one, is not a tall man, not at all, man, no such parson, no such fender, no such lumber, no such race. This directly refutes the tall man description, stating he's not 6'1", and denies the existence of a parson, friender, lumber, or race. This is a direct challenge to the reader, isn't it? Don't believe everything you hear.
It's a masterful stroke of deconstruction from Joyce. After building up such a vivid, albeit ambiguous scene, the narrator completely pulls the rug out from under us. This outright dismissal highlights the inherently unreliable nature of the preceding testimony, and Joyce's profound deconstruction of conventional narrative truth. The core insight is that Joyce deliberately frustrates our desire for a definitive account, forcing us to confront the fact that in the wake, truth is not only elusive, but actively contradicted by the narrative itself. We are, as the narrator implies, reading a non-true story.
So if that account is transparently untrue, what did supposedly happen? This leads to yet another version of events. Was it supposedly in connection with a girl's marry me Huey or Caloris Archer under Flaggy Bridge for and there is but one live and her new bridge is her old? Or to explode his 12-chamber and force a shrievalty entrance that the heavy-built able body in a butchered blue blouse from One Life One Suit, a menswear store, with the most decisive bottle of single in his possession, seized after dark by the town guard at Heavycott Emerod's Temperance Gateway, was there in a gate's way? This poses a new set of questions. Was it about girls? Miriam Huey, Caloris Archer, alluding to myriad hues and rainbow colors, part of the 7 Rainbow Girls motif, or about exploding a 12-chamber revolver and forcing shrievalty entrance, a sheriff's office? What's the significance of the heavy-built able body and the setting?
This new version presents a farcical yet deeply symbolic scene. The heavy-built able body, evoking able and an able-bodied man, is described in a butcher blue blouse, like a butcher's apron, also referencing the Irish blue shirt's political movement. He's from One Life One Suit, a menswear store implying a suit for life, suggesting a common man, perhaps with a touch of political affiliation. He has a decisive bottle of single, or mild ale, and is seized by the town guard at Have-You-Caught Emerod's Temperance Gateway. Emerods, or hemorrhoids, is a biblical punishment, and Temperance Gateway alludes to temperance hotels with their Have You Found Jesus chants. It creates an image of a man caught at a moral and physical crossroads, detained at a place symbolizing both self-control and moral judgment. The core insight here is that the search for HCE's crime continually shifts, presenting him as either a sexual transgressor or a public nuisance, caught at a symbolic gateway of societal judgment, reflecting the many ways a single event can be misconstrued or reinterpreted.
And what's the truth of it? The original defense for being at the gate, that he'd drunk too much and was falling against it, or trying to open the stout bottle by hammering it, is dismissed as lame because the Boots, Maurice Behan, refutes it. Behan was wakened up out of the land of Bilo in bed by loud hearing hammering emanating from the gate. Behan, a servant figure, states that this battering all over the door and side panels was not in the least remotest like a bottle of stout, but much more like the overture to the last day, if anything. This powerful testimony refutes the mundane explanation, suggesting a much more dramatic, almost apocalyptic event. The taverns, the House of Blazes, the parrot, the orange tree, the glib, the sun, and the holy lamb are all brought into play as part of Dublin's historical pub scene, setting a boozy backdrop for this ultimate enigmatic incident. What's the final takeaway from this conflicting testimony?
Maurice Behan's testimony is incredibly significant because it directly challenges the simple, convenient explanation. As a boots, or a servant, he represents a kind of ground-level, unfiltered truth, and his assertion that the noise was much more like the overture to the last day elevates the incident from a drunken mishap to something of cosmic importance. By invoking the imagery of the last day, Joyce implies an event of profound, almost apocalyptic consequence, even if its true nature remains shrouded in ambiguity. The backdrop of Dublin's historical pub scene further grounds this grand cosmic event in the everyday boozy reality of the city. The ultimate takeaway is that HCE's actions, even the most seemingly mundane, are magnified and mythologized by the collective imagination, transforming a simple incident into an event of profound and ambiguous significance, reflecting the eternal human struggle to define truth amidst a cacophony of voices.
So as we conclude this deep dive into pages 60 through 63, what have we truly uncovered? It feels like a whirlwind. We've navigated this vortex of public opinion where HCE is simultaneously a victim, a brute, a legendary figure, and, well, a punchline. We've seen how Joyce masterfully intertwines everyday Dublin gossip with ancient myths, sensational newspaper headlines with classical literature, and the mundane details of daily life with the profoundly symbolic. The truth, if it exists in any singular form, seems buried under layers of dazzling wordplay, conflicting accounts, and the inherently fluid nature of language itself. Every voice, from the boy cursor to the girl detective, offers a piece of the puzzle, yet no single piece ever seems to complete the picture. It leaves us questioning the very reliability of narrative, the inherent biases of perception, and the immense power of rumor to shape reality.
It's a powerful lesson in textual and social interpretation, isn't it? We've seen how quickly an individual can be tried, condemned, and even mythologized by public sentiment, often based on fragmented, contradictory, or outright false information. Joyce forces us to become active participants in this process, constantly sifting through the evidence, questioning the narrators, and grappling with the impossibility of a single definitive truth. HCE is less a character in some ways, and more a receptacle for the collective projections and anxieties of the world around him.
And this leads us to a provocative thought for you, our listener, to mull over. As you reflect on this segment of Finnegans Wake, consider how often in our own lives we rely on fragmented information, popular opinion, or sensational headlines to form our considered attitudes about others or about complex events. In a world awash with information, what does it truly mean to be well-informed about a person or an event when the very sources might be, as Joyce puts it, using the truth, but sparingly? And what role do we play as the perusers of these constantly shifting narratives in constructing and interpreting the reality around us? It's a question that resonates far beyond the pages of Joyce's masterpiece, challenging us to look deeper and question everything.